I couldn't move. The phone lay on the carpet, its screen dimming slowly as if mocking me. My mother's voice, my sister's laughter, those sounds still echoed in my mind, sharp and painful. It felt like the world around me had lost its color. The soft pastel hues of the cherry blossoms outside, now a stark and unforgiving white. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse right there in my wedding dress. But nothing came out. All I could do was sit there, my hands gripping the armrest of the vanity chair until my knuckles turned white. The room was filled with people. My bridesmaids, the makeup artist, the wedding planner, but it felt so empty. Their faces blurred, their soft whispers nothing more than static noise. My mind spiraled, every hope I had for this day unraveling into a tangled mess of confusion and betrayal. How could they do this to me? Was I not enough? Or was I just a prop in their social media fairy tale, only valuable when I could be filtered and hashtagged? I stared at the mirror, and the woman looking back at me felt like a stranger. Her makeup was perfect, her hair elegantly styled, but behind those eyes was a girl who had just lost her family. Not to death, but to something colder, apathy. Minutes stretched on, each tick of the clock a reminder that time would not stop for my pain. Guests were arriving. I could hear the shuffle of footsteps, the murmur of voices just outside the door. They were expecting a celebration, a love story, not this. A gentle knock pulled me out of my trance. The door opened, and there stood Jennifer Anderson. She didn't say anything at first, she didn't need to. Her expression held a quiet understanding, a knowing sympathy. She had seen the photos on social media, the sun-soaked beach, my family lounging without a care in the world. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. I thought I would break when I met her gaze, but instead I felt something else, a flicker of strength. Jennifer took my hands, her warmth grounding me in that fragile moment. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Let me take the place of your family today." A fresh wave of tears welled up, but this time they weren't tears of loss. They were of gratitude. Because even when my blood family had abandoned me, here stood someone who chose me, who wanted to be here, not for show but for love. I wiped my tears, careful not to smudge the makeup. I wasn't going to let this ruin me. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I would show everyone what real family looked like, because it wasn't about who shared your last name or who sat at your dinner table. It was about who stood by you when the world fell apart. Jennifer led me out of the bridal room, and as I stepped into the sunlit aisle, I felt a shift in the air. The guests turned, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. My family wasn't there, but my real family, the one I had built through love, friendship, and shared experiences, was. The ceremony began, not as I had imagined it, but as it needed to be. My vows weren't just to David, but to everyone there who had chosen to stay. With every word, I felt lighter, as if shedding the weight of years of unmet expectations and silent disappointments. And when the ceremony ended, and Jennifer took my hand for a photograph, I knew what I had to do. I opened my phone, the same device that had delivered the cruel blow earlier, and posted a single picture, me in my wedding dress, surrounded by my true family. The ceremony began, not with the grand entrance I had always imagined, but with a quiet strength that only came from necessity. As I walked down the aisle, I felt the weight of every step. My bouquet trembled slightly in my hands, but not from nerves. It was the realization that my family, my own flesh and blood, had chosen a beach vacation over me. But with each step, I felt the presence of those who had chosen to be there. Guests who had seen me grow up, colleagues who had shared long shifts at the hospital, childhood friends whose laughter had been woven into the fabric of my life. And at the front, David stood, his eyes soft, his smile unwavering. When I reached him, he didn't ask where my family was, he didn't need to. His hand found mine, warm and steady, and in that moment I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Jennifer stood close by, not in the spotlight, but ever present. Her support was a quiet hum, a backdrop to the vows that I spoke, not just to David, but to everyone there. I promise love, not just in sickness and health, but in betrayal and healing. I vowed to create a family where love was earned and cherished, not taken for granted. When David spoke his vows, the room seemed to hold its breath. He didn't just pledge his love to me. He extended it to every person who had stood by us. He spoke of building new traditions, of family dinners filled with laughter, of holiday gatherings where everyone had a seat at the table. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic sobs, just a profound sense of unity. It wasn't the wedding I had planned, but it was the wedding I needed. And then came the moment that would change everything. As the pastor pronounced us husband and wife, Jennifer approached with her phone in hand. She showed me the post I had made just minutes earlier. The likes, the comments, they were already pouring in. But this wasn't about social media validation. This was about reclaiming my story. Jennifer's idea had been simple but powerful. She wanted the world to see the truth, not through bitterness, but through grace. We stood together for a photograph in front of the stained glass windows, the morning light casting a soft glow around us. The caption read, "Introducing today's special guest, Jennifer Anderson, my family by choice." It wasn't a statement of loss, but of gain. And as the picture circulated, as the story began to unfold through the eyes of those who had witnessed it firsthand, a new narrative emerged. I didn't expect what happened next. Within hours, the story spread. Friends of friends shared it, local businesses reposted it, and soon enough, even the hospital's official page shared a heartfelt message of support. It wasn't just my story anymore. It had become a testament to the power of chosen family. Jennifer stayed by my side through it all. She guided me with a calm wisdom, helping me navigate the surge of attention. She wasn't just stepping into the role of a surrogate mother, she was showing me what real family meant. And as the sun set on that spring day, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the weather. I had lost a family, yes, but I had gained so much more. Because family isn't just about who shares your name, it's about who shares your pain, your joy, and your journey. And in that church, surrounded by petals and promises, I had finally found mine. As the reception began, a quiet murmur filled the air. Guests moved through the elegantly decorated hall, their smiles warm yet cautious, as if they were unsure how to navigate the delicate balance between celebration and sympathy. I watched, as familiar faces drifted past. My childhood friend who had shared secrets under a blanket fort, my colleagues from the hospital who had seen me through sleepless nights and long shifts, even neighbors who had once shared sugar and small talk over the garden fence. They were all here, and yet the absence of my family lingered like a shadow over the day. But as the afternoon unfolded, something remarkable began to happen. One by one, guests approached me, not with pity, but with love. They shared stories of kindness, moments we had shared, little glimpses of a life woven with genuine connection. An elderly neighbor clasped my hands, her skin paper-thin and warm. "You've always been like a granddaughter to me," she whispered, and I felt the weight of her words, the truth of them, settle in my heart. My colleagues surprised me by sharing a video compilation of patients from the children's hospital, their small voices chiming in with congratulations and bright smiles, the screen filled with their laughter. And for the first time that day, I felt joy push through the grief. Jennifer moved through the room with a quiet grace, introducing me to friends of hers who had known me since I was a little girl. She spoke of me not as an outsider, but as part of her own family. It was subtle, but every word built a bridge over the chasm my own family had left behind. And then, something even more beautiful happened. The guests began to form a circle around us, Jennifer, David, and me. One by one, they joined hands, creating an unbroken ring of support. A cousin from my mother's side stepped forward, her voice trembling. "We didn't know," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "If we had, we would have been here sooner." I nodded, unable to speak. My heart was full, not with sadness, but with an overwhelming sense of being loved. This was my family. These were the people who chose to be here, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They stood with me, hand in hand, and in that moment, the emptiness faded. This wasn't just a wedding reception. It was a reclamation of love and the beginning of a new chapter. one where family wasn't defined by blood, but by choice. And as the church bells rang in the distance, I knew that whatever lay ahead, I would never walk alone. The ceremony itself became something far more profound than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about the union of two people. It was a gathering of souls who had chosen to be there, who had chosen to love and support us. As David and I stood before the altar, the stained glass casting rainbows across the floor, I felt a surge of emotion I hadn't expected. The room was filled with warmth, not just from the spring sun, but from the genuine affection of everyone present. I took a deep breath, my vows trembling on the edge of my lips. I hadn't planned to rewrite them, but standing there, surrounded by those who truly mattered, I knew I couldn't read from a script written in a different reality. I always thought family was something you were born into, I began, my voice softer than I intended. But today, I realize family is something you create. It's the people who choose you, who stand by you, not because they have to, but because they want to. I looked into David's eyes, and the rest of the world faded. I promise to love you, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. To build a life with you that is filled with laughter and light, surrounded by those who truly care. Today, I am not just gaining a husband, I am building a new family. David's hand tightened around mine, his expression a mirror of my own. When he spoke, his words were steady and sure. Emma, you are my home, and I vow to fill our home with love, not just between us, but for everyone who stands with us today. We are not just two people coming together. We are a family being born. There was a stillness in the room, a quiet that felt sacred. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, as if the church itself understood the significance of this moment. When the pastor pronounced us husband and wife, the applause that followed wasn't just celebratory, it was healing. Each clap felt like a stitch, mending the wounds left by those who had abandoned me. Jennifer approached us then, her face glowing with pride. She held out her phone, showing me the post I had shared earlier. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of messages of love and support. People I hadn't spoken to in years, strangers, who had stumbled upon my story, all offering comfort and encouragement. She leaned in, her voice a whisper meant only for me. This is just the beginning. And I believed her. Because as I stood there, surrounded by love, I knew that the life ahead of me wasn't defined by the family I had lost, but by the family I was creating. The church bells began to ring, their sound clear and bright, as if announcing not just a marriage, but a rebirth. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt all day. Peace. In the days that followed, my story spread beyond our small town. It was as if the photograph of Jennifer and me in my wedding dress had ignited a spark, a reminder that love and family were not bound by blood. The post began to circulate, first among friends, then shared by local businesses, and soon enough, it reached the broader community. People resonated with the story of betrayal and redemption, of loss and newfound strength. What I hadn't expected, though, was the ripple effect it would have. The support was overwhelming. Messages flooded my inbox, not just from those who knew me, but from complete strangers. People shared their own stories of being let down by family, of finding solace in the kindness of others. My story had become a mirror, reflecting the quiet heartbreaks and the powerful resilience that so many held within. But as my world filled with new connections and healing, the fallout for my biological family was swift and undeniable. Jennifer had warned me that actions have consequences, and I saw that truth unfold in real time. My father, Robert Wilson, once a respected businessman, began losing contracts almost immediately. Anderson Mall severed ties with his company, a financial blow that sent shockwaves through his business empire. Without that cornerstone deal, other clients followed suit. The whispers began. If he couldn't show up for his own daughter, how could he be trusted in business? His company's stock plummeted, and within months, he was forced to step down as president. My mother, Margaret, who had crafted a life around social media, found herself at the center of a different kind of storm. The picture-perfect facade she had built crumbled under the weight of public opinion. Her followers turned against her, questioning how a mother could choose a vacation over her daughter's wedding. Brands that once partnered with her quickly distanced themselves. The lavish lifestyle she had flaunted became a bitter reminder of what she had lost, not material things, but something far more precious. And my sister Ashley, the influencer with the meticulously curated feed, faced a reckoning of her own. Her betrayal had struck a chord and the internet did not hold back. Her follower count plummeted, sponsorships vanished, and soon, the platform that had once been her playground became a hostile space. She retreated, disappearing from the digital world she had once dominated. Through all of this, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was no joy in seeing their downfall, only a quiet acceptance that the universe had a way of balancing things. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. Jennifer stood by me, her support unwavering. She became more than just a family friend. She was my family. She guided me through the media attention, helped me set boundaries, and ensured that I remained grounded. She even accepted the role of godmother when a few months later, David and I announced that we were expecting our first child. Life began to take on a new rhythm. My work at the hospital flourished, and my passion for photographing the smiles of the children I cared for turned into a beloved social media project. Every Sunday, I would share a snapshot of joy, a reminder that even in the toughest times, there was light. David and I built a home that was filled with laughter and love. Our dinner table was always open to those who needed a place to belong. Holidays became about creating new traditions, ones not tied to obligation, but to joy and gratitude. And every month we took family photos. Not for social media, not for show, but for us. To capture the real moments, the messy, imperfect, beautiful reality of the life we were creating, Jennifer hosted Sunday dinners at her mansion where our new family gathered. The room was filled with warmth, with the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation. My paternal grandfather, who had once been stoic and distant, became a fixture at these gatherings, sharing stories and laughter. He had chosen to break away from the toxicity of his own children, finding solace in the family we had built through love and choice. As I moved through this new chapter, I often thought about the wedding day, the day that had started with heartbreak but ended with hope. The story had become more than just mine. It was a story about how family is defined not by blood, but by those who stand with you when the world feels heavy. And as spring came again, with cherry blossoms blooming in St. Mary's Church garden, I knew that my story had not ended. It had just begun. 1 year later, as spring returned to Greenwich, I found myself standing once again in the garden of St. Mary's Church. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, their delicate petals dancing in the breeze. It was as if nothing had changed, and yet everything was different. I wasn't wearing a wedding dress this time. Instead, I held David's hand, my other hand resting gently on my growing belly. Around us stood our family, the one we had built through love, not blood. Jennifer was there, her eyes bright with pride, and my grandfather, who had found a new chapter of his own, laughed warmly with my childhood friends. We had gathered for our first wedding anniversary, not just to celebrate our marriage, but to honor the family we had become. The church bells rang, and this time, their sound didn't echo with loss, but with promise. The story of my wedding day had continued to spread, becoming a quiet legend in our community. It was shared as a reminder of what truly mattered, not the grandeur of a perfect day, but the strength of the people who stood by you when everything fell apart. The media attention had faded, the headlines replaced by newer stories, but the lesson remained. The children at the hospital still called me Dr. Emma, and their smiles became the brightest part of my days. My photography project, Today's Smile, grew into something beautiful, capturing not just moments of joy, but the resilience of the human spirit. At our family dinners, new faces often joined. Friends of friends who needed a place to belong, colleagues who found solace in our warmth. Each time we pulled up another chair, filled another plate, and welcomed them with open arms. And through it all, I found peace. I had learned that family was not a right, it was a gift, given freely and cherished deeply. As I stood in the garden, a soft petal landed on my hand, and I thought back to that moment a year ago, when I had felt so alone. If only I could have whispered to that girl in the wedding dress, "Hold on. It gets better. The love you are searching for is just around the corner," and it was. It always had been. I just needed to open my heart to those who were willing to love me for who I truly was. As we prepared to leave, Jennifer took my hand, just as she had on that fateful morning. Her grip was still as warm, still as steady. "Are you ready?" she asked. I looked around at the faces of my family, David, my grandfather, our friends, and soon our child. And with a smile, I nodded. Yes, I'm ready. Because in that moment, surrounded by love, I knew the truth. Family isn't just about where you come from. It's about who stands with you when you need them most. And as long as I held on to that truth, I would never walk alone.